Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Cold Red. I'm Ray Carr, and with me always is Fitz. Fitz, how are you?
Good evening, Ray. How are you today?
Good. Jim, tonight we have a special guest. His name is Kenneth Strange. He's a former FBI special agent and was also a special agent in charge at the Department of Justice. Ken, welcome to the show. It's a pleasure to have you.
You're very welcome. Ken, we like to kind of start sometimes with sort of the Wayback Machine, we call it. Give us and our audience a little bit of a history. By the way, and we're going to talk a little bit about your book, A Cop's Son, One G-Man's Fight Against Jihad. So we'll come to that a little bit later. But we'd like to hear, and our audience likes to hear, how you started out in this business, where you were born, growing up, school, and then how did you become an FBI agent? Ken, can you give us a time frame here? Because you mentioned Iran. We're talking the 60s, just a few years before that, right?
Ken, before you go on there, I want to take a step back for just a second. You know, it was a very volatile time when you were over there. A lot going on in a lot of these different countries. At any time, were you at risk because you are American? You're over there. I mean, you don't look like a native Iranian, Saudi Arabian, Egyptian. You don't look like anything like that. Was there any concern on your behalf about the harm coming to you?
Very, very, very biblical anecdote there, getting stoned by an unruly mob.
Don't blame the Irish, whatever you do. Jim and I are both Irish, so don't blame the Irish.
You know, and for some of our younger audience members, this was a volatile time worldwide with some of the Islamicists and plane hijackings, ship hijackings, the Achille Lauro. A few years later, the Marine barracks in Beirut was attacked. And so a lot of things going on during that time frame. And here you are, you know, three Anglos at least with your two Irish friends and the Filipino, and you're just wrong place, wrong time. But luckily, Ken, you're here to talk about it a few decades later. Oh, yeah.
So going back to where you were talking about, out of this graduate school in Arizona, and you're recruited by the FBI, decide to take them up on their offer. Tell us what happened. So what year did you go into the academy? You were right after me, Ken. I was 89-2.
You were probably there at the same time, maybe for a few weeks anyway.
No, we were there. 89-2 was there, 89-3, because we were out of there July 7th. Were you there by then? Yeah. So I just missed you.
I was a couple years before, but go ahead.
We have to respect our elders. You know what I mean, Ken?
Yeah. You are certainly welcome. So you're through the academy. It's funny, just for our people that are listening, if you apply to the FBI, you may have a lot of credentials under your belt, but if you lived in one or maybe two cities, like went somewhere for school, it's a streamlined background check they have to do on you. But Ken, I guarantee you, as much as they may have wanted you in, you added a few months to the background check, because not only where you lived, but where you visited, and in the Middle East, again, these problematic areas. So they had a double check. You weren't one of them coming into the FBI. Anyway, of course, you passed the background and you got in. And your first office is Joint Terrorism Task Force. I had a sergeant like that. Don't you love when a supervisor does that to you as a new member of a squad or a unit? Anyway, been there, done that.
See, there's a couple guys that, a guy by the name of Bill Waldy. You know Bill Waldy? He was there. How about Jeff McClain? Think of some of those towns. Yeah, I know, right? Here's the difference between Newark with you, Ken, and probably with Jim up in New York. I was in Buffalo to start, then came to Philly, 91. And on my squad was a bank robbery fugitive squad, but we also it was a terrorism squad as well. So we had like 30 guys on that squad, which included Jersey troopers, Philadelphia police officers, the whole cabal, Pennsylvania state troopers. And everybody was one squad. We didn't have a separate squad in the early 90s. That didn't probably come into after the first World Trade Center bombing. That's when they decided to make those squads and create those additional terrorism squads where they were kind of geared towards it. But prior to that first World Trade Center bombing, everybody was together. So, we're going on bank robberies and the terrorism guys are coming out with us on bank robberies. Yep. Pat Sullivan. Okay. Yep. He was on the OC squad. Yeah.
Organized. Any of the names we're dropping here, if you guys want to be a guest on Cold Red, let us know. You know how to contact us.
We can reach out to these guys.
So, Ken, Ray mentioned the first World Trade Center bombing. That, of course, was 1993. New Jersey, Newark Division played a big role in that. Were you still on that squad then? It was a long train ride.
Well, Ken.
And good for you taking the initiative. Sometimes there's a lot of other coordinated ways someone gets locked up or their kid gets locked up. That way you flip them, get them to work for you. You saw someone, you knew he was involved in that movement, and you took a chance. You sat down, and who knows how things could have gone. That was 91.
I would love to hear about this transition of yours, where you made the transition from the FBI. I mean, what an asset you were to the Bureau with your skill set. And then all of a sudden you decide to go to another agency. Was it a competing agency or was it something different? How did it happen? Didn't you have the opportunity to do the same thing in the Bureau?
Yeah, I was going to say the turnover rate in the FBI is very low. You were basically home. You grew up in Brooklyn and you are in North Jersey. You said you were married and you had a wife and a house. The idea of adventure and travel spoke to you. And DOJ, of course, it's the federal government, so you weren't giving up your pension or anything like that. You just rolled that over into our mother agency, I guess, the Department of Justice. So that part wasn't an issue. So did you actually get sent to some other office in the U.S. or internationally once you left the Bureau? Didn't know any country ever graduated from us giving them aid, but I guess at least the Costa Ricans did. Jeez. Yeah, I'm sure they're getting it back now. So, yes, that's tough to believe. So you're in San Salvador at this point, the capital, for a few years, working fraud cases, international. Interesting. And you got involved in some cartels while in Latin America or investigating them.
Ken, are you able to talk about, you're with the Bureau, you kind of leave the Bureau and you say you go to an agency. Now, I have a feeling and maybe our audience does too, are you able to talk about who that agency is? So we're saying probably about 3 years with the Bureau. Is that about right? And then would you say another 3 or 4 years with AID? About 6? Okay. And then over to
that's Office of Inspector General, just for all the acronyms we throw around here. Ken, you were aware that at some point in your career, you had a friend, a colleague, who was actually killed by Al Qaeda, and I believe in Jordan, in the Middle East. Could you share some of that with us? Was an arrest ever made, or did our military take care of his group? How did that work out? That's right. Yes, that's right. Yes. Was Larry his name, right?
Lawrence
Did his death sort of change the trajectory of your career, make you think about some things or move in a different direction?
Let me ask you this. When you left USAID and you go over to DOJ, which is OIG, which is the Office of the Inspector General. I know we're throwing all these acronyms out there, but the Office of the Inspector, what were your responsibilities, investigative responsibilities with OIG? Let me just see if I can kind of reduce this to something that our audience might understand. When you look at what you did, would you consider it to be something similar to an internal affairs within a police department that looks at all the abuse and the waste within a police department and corruption by those officers? Is that fair to say? So here's my next question. Was there ever an occasion where you were involved in an investigation related to the Bureau?
And here you're an outsider to the FBI. However, you went through the academy and spent 3 years as a special agent. So you also have that connection to everything you're doing there. So
again, for our audience, when you talk about lack of candor, when an agent gets caught up in lies, it destroys his career because he can never testify in open court again. It just kind of makes him useless as an agent. And so they're tied to a desk or they wind up being terminated, which it's really hard to get fired from the FBI unless you're committing a crime, which That's happened too, but you never hear about those things, you know? Did you ever, what's the most egregious incident that you can recall? Doesn't matter if it was with the Bureau or any other agency. Yeah, it's always sad when those things happen.
Well, just like you tried to recruit the jihadists on the train way back in your early career, someone may have sat down with this boss in this El Paso office at a bar, restaurant. Hey, I heard you're this and your wife's looking for a job. Next thing you know, he fell for it. He kept that business card. He made a phone call or email, whatever it was. And I'm sure you had those records available too. So that's how this recruiting works. You use that word a few times. The Bureau recruited you. Then I guess USAID recruited you. You tried to recruit the guy on the train. His business card was found when he was arrested, or your business card was found. So it's interesting how that works. And even the good guys can get recruited, to do bad things. And that's what happened in this case you just described. And fortunately, we have, agencies and divisions and departments like yours that keep the people on the up and up and honest and all that stuff. So yeah, it makes for an interesting career. So when did you finally hang up the gloves, retire? And what have you been doing since then? Special agent in charge. You'll be running the office. Here's what we'll say. You unrecruited those people. It's not really a word if you're out there listening, but well, I use it for these purposes. So you finally retire. All right. And at some point, I suppose in retirement, you wrote your book, A Cop's Son, One G-Man's Fight Against Jihad. And two of our former Cold Red guests, Ed Morales and Bobby Chacon, both gave positive reviews to this book. So the other names you can just, put aside. When I actually endorse it, it's a good book.
Absolutely.
Mine too. Silence of the Lambs was filmed when you were there. Interesting. How can someone get your books, plural, if they want a website, put anything out there that can help out?
Interesting.
Wow, we've learned a lot from you, Ken. You've lived quite the life of open doors and sliding doors and all those things, and you went in many of them. And here you are now, a kid from Brooklyn, living in beautiful. Well, we'll just say you're living in Southern California. There you go. Well, it's a nice, almost biblical effect on you. We'll bring it back that way.
Yes.
Ray, any final words before I take us out?
Ken, I really enjoyed our conversation. I can't believe we were so close together. Was Larry Bonney your class counselor? Larry Bonney? Yeah, not the two field agents, but who was the overall counselor? Yeah, Larry Bonney. Yeah, he was ours. Bob Rogers, yeah. Yeah, Nakamura. Remember Jeff Nakamura? Yes, Nakamura. Some of those guys.
Well, these names. Bob Rogers, I'll never forget, when the Cold War was still, we're going to end with this story. When the Cold War was still going on, Soviet Union, U.S., I'm in class 1988, and he sits the whole class down. He got to know us now. We're like in our 10th, 12th week, and he just tells the whole class, about 40 of us, yeah, I just want you to know, and he was a big runner, by the way, former Marine, big run. And he said, we're all sitting down after a big run. Just so you know, if we ever find out that the Soviets launched the ICBMs, the nuclear missiles are coming to us, the East Coast, Washington, Richmond, we're all going to be gone. He said, you know what I would do? And we all kind of look at each other. No. And he goes, I'd get my wife and my kids and we'd go for a run. And he didn't crack a smile. He was dead serious. And that's the kind of guy he was. And he taught us so well, defensive tactics, keep in shape. He eat well. Unfortunately, he died of cancer maybe 10, 15 years ago, but that'll get anyone in that regard.
Well, here's a Bob Rogers. One more Bob Rogers story, Ken and Fitz. We're sitting there and we're in class and he's starting some defensive tactics. And he goes, he points to me. He says, come up here. He says, give me a push. So I gave him a little push, and he goes, come on, give me a push. Because that's no push. Give me a push. So I said, are you sure? And he goes, yeah, give me a push. Well, I did. I lifted him right off the ground and right on his ass. Yeah, he went right down and everybody was like amazed. He goes, he got up, he says, that's the best push I ever had. That's what he says. It's amazing, just amazing.
I'm going to sign us out, but before we go out, I want to give a little word to a friend of mine from Bensalem PD, Terry Lockman, who just died last week. We were rookies together. I went to the FBI. He went to Bucks County Detectives, and I met him in Florida a few times since then. He was going to be a guest on Cold Red, but it didn't quite work out. The big C got to him. So, Terry, you were a great police officer, detective, and friend, and kudos to you and your wife, Janice, and rest in peace, pal. And so with that in mind, everyone, thanks for listening. Thanks for checking us out on Cold Red. Please go to our website, coldredpodcast.com. Like us, subscribe, a thumbs up, all those type things. And I want to thank Matt McDonald, Matt Robinson, our producers, Rick Schilling, our music producer. And remember, we'll see you next week, another episode of Cold Red. And until then, stay safe, be aware of your surroundings, because it might just save your life. Thanks, Ken. Thanks, Ray. See you guys next time.